They thought they could take advantage. Caitlin Clark was out. It was just a preseason game, and the Mystics thought they could get physical, push Indiana around, and send a message before the season even began. But they forgot one thing. Sophie Cunningham was on the floor. When Mystics rookie Kiki Iriafen grabbed Sophie mid-rebound and slammed her to the hardwood, it wasn't just a dirty play, it was a statement.
Debbie, this is a preseason game, and I know it wasn't announced that Caitlin Clark wouldn't play until right before, but this is a preseason game where Clark is not available, and yet you probably...
The kind of play that says, we're not afraid of you, we're here to dominate. But what they didn't expect was a response, not with trash talk, not with retaliation, with buckets.
Drawn on the drive, high arcing pass, it was too high. Hull pulls down the rebound, here's Cunningham again, Cunningham coast to coast.
What a first half for Sophie Cunningham. And it's just a preseason, Pat!
Cunningham didn't complain, she didn't flop. She got up, got focused, and got even. 1 point. 8 rebounds. 1 message. You don't try that nonsense with Indiana anymore. The Mystics came in thinking they could punk the Fever without Caitlin Clark on the floor. Instead, they walked away from a loss, a lesson, and a highlight reel full of Sophie Cunningham, lighting them up from everywhere on the court. This wasn't just a preseason win, it was a shift in identity. The Indiana Fever aren't backing down anymore, and Sophie Cunningham, she's leading the charge. In this video, we're breaking down exactly what happened during that chaotic game, the flagrant foul that could have changed everything, and how Sophie responded by torching the very team that tried to break her. If you stand with Indiana, drop a spicy Sophie in the comments. Let's get into it. For the first time in 5 years, Caitlin Clark wasn't in uniform, not in college, not in the WNBA. She's played through soreness, packed arenas, and carried teams night after night. But in this preseason opener against the Washington Mystics, the Indiana Fever made the smart call. Clark would sit. The reason? Tightness in her left leg. Nothing major. But with a long, grueling season ahead, 4 more games than last year, the team wasn't about to gamble with their star's health. Head coach Stephanie White made it clear, we're thinking long-term, and that's the right move. But in the short term, it left the Fever vulnerable. This wasn't just any preseason game. Over 12,000 fans packed Gainbridge Fieldhouse, expecting to see the biggest name in women's basketball. And when it was announced that Clark was unavailable, the Mystics saw an opportunity. No Caitlin, no crowd momentum, just a young team missing. Its centerpiece. And Washington? They pounced. From the opening tip, the Mystics played like sharks in the water. Aggressive, physical, unapologetic. They were daring someone, anyone, to step up in Caitlin's absence. The Fever, meanwhile, came out flat. Missed layups, no offensive rhythm, poor defensive rotations. By the end of the first quarter, they were already down by double digits, outscored 24-13. This game was starting to look like a blowout. It was Indiana's worst-case scenario. No superstar, no energy, and a team across from them that came to dominate, not to play nice. But what the Mystics didn't know was that this wouldn't be the same Indiana team they pushed around last year, and they were about to find that out the hard way. From the very first possession, it was obvious. The Washington Mystics came to impose their will. They weren't interested in easing into a preseason matchup. They smelled vulnerability, and they attacked it like a team trying to send a message. No Caitlin Clark meant no floor general, no pace setter, no calming force. And the Fever? They felt it. Sloppy passes, missed layups, disconnected offense. It was a sluggish, stuck-in-the-mud start. Indiana looked like they were running in slow motion, while Washington played with intent and intensity. By the end of the first quarter, the Fever were down 24-13. The deficit ballooned to 15 points early, in the second. At that point, it didn't even feel like a contest. It felt like a statement from the Mystics. We don't care who's missing. We're going to beat you up anyway. And it wasn't just scoreboard dominance, it was physical dominance. The Mystics pushed Indiana off their spots. They bodied up on screens. They crowded passing lanes and delivered contact on nearly every drive. It was aggressive, borderline excessive, but the Fever didn't respond, at least not yet. Head coach Stephanie White called a timeout, and while we don't know what she said in that huddle, you can bet it wasn't polite. Over 12,000 fans packed Gainbridge Fieldhouse for this game, and White made sure her players remembered that. This wasn't just a preseason warm-up. This was their home court. This was their moment to prove they weren't the same team as last year. And just when it looked like Washington was about to run away with it, someone did step up, and everything changed. Everything changed with one play. 5 minutes left in the second quarter. The Fever were clawing their way back, slowly chipping away at the deficit. Sophie Cunningham, who had already begun to heat up, was moving off the ball, finding space, setting screens, and making herself a problem for the Mystics' defense. Then came the moment that flipped the entire game on its head. Mystics rookie Kiki Iriafen grabbed Cunningham during a rebound battle and violently threw her to the floor. And this wasn't just a hard foul. This was a full-body takedown, the kind of move that belongs in a wrestling ring, not a basketball court. The crowd gasped. The bench exploded. And Sophie? She didn't flinch. She popped up like she'd been waiting for that moment all game. Eyes locked on Iriafen, chest out, zero fear. She got in her face and made it very clear, you don't get to do that and walk away quietly. Officials stepped in. Replays were shown. The call? A flagrant one on Iriafen. And let's be honest, it felt soft considering what actually happened. You could hear the frustration in the arena. Fans weren't just angry about the foul. They were fired up by Sophie's reaction, because this wasn't last year's Indiana Fever. Last year, that kind of hit might have gone unanswered. This year, you try to bully one of us, and the whole team answers. The moment Sophie got up and confronted Iriafen, something shifted. The energy in the arena flipped. The Fever bench came alive. The players locked in. And Sophie, she didn't get rattled. She got focused. The Mystics thought they were sending a message, but all they really did was wake up a dog. You'd think after that flagrant foul, the Mystics would ease off. They didn't. They doubled down. Later in the game, Brittany Sykes delivered another cheap shot, this time a blatant shove that sent Sophie Cunningham crashing to the floor again. And just like earlier, it wasn't basketball, it was bullying. This wasn't physical defense, this was personal. And that's when something incredible happened. Indiana didn't back down, they stood up, all of them. Before the refs even blew the whistle, Dewana Bonner was in Sykes' face, letting her know in no uncertain terms that this isn't going to fly. The Fever bench erupted. Players rushed to pull each other up. This wasn't chaos, it was unity, and that's the difference. Last season, the Fever might have taken it. They might have looked around waiting for someone else to react. But this season, they have leaders, they have enforcers, and they have each other's backs. Sophie didn't cower. Bonner didn't hesitate. The message was clear. Mess with one, mess with all. You could feel the shift in the arena. That silent hope from the fans turned into full-throated fire. They weren't just watching a game, they were watching a transformation. The Mystics thought they could rattle this team. Instead, they galvanized it. Every cheap shot, every shove, every smirk from Washington only added fuel to the Fever's fire. The players got tighter. The crowd got louder. The intensity rose to a level that even the Mystics couldn't match, and right in the middle of it all was Sophie Cunningham, not just standing her ground, but feeding off the challenge. This wasn't just a preseason game anymore. It was war. And Indiana, they were finally ready to fight back. After getting slammed to the hardwood and shoved to the ground again, most players might have backed off. Most would have cooled down, played it safe, tried not to get hurt before the regular season even started. But Sophie Cunningham, she went the other way. She turned that rage into rhythm and started lighting the Mystics up. What we saw next was a clinic. Mid-range jumpers, slashes to the rim, knockdown threes, aggressive drives that forced defenders to foul. The Mystics kept trying to body her, bump her, frustrate her, but Sophie didn't fold. She turned up. Points, 8 rebounds, 55% from the field, 88% from the free throw line. And this wasn't empty scoring. This was timely, momentum-swinging, game-defining basketball. Every bucket felt personal. Every rebound was ripped down like it meant something more than just stats. You could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just about the scoreboard anymore. It was about sending a message. You want to cheap shot me in a preseason game? Cool. Watch me own you for the next 30 minutes. Her play was aggressive but controlled, emotional but efficient. She wasn't just retaliating, she was leading. And the rest of the Fever followed. Players started cutting harder, defending smarter, talking louder, and it all started with Sophie raising the bar. She turned defense into offense, fought for every loose ball, and never, not once, let the Mystics see her flinch. At one point, she took a defensive rebound coast to coast and finished through. Contact. And that wasn't just a highlight, it was a statement. Sophie Cunningham didn't come to Indiana to be a side note. She came to make noise, and that 21-point outburst, that wasn't revenge. That was accountability. That was her saying, you don't get to play dirty and win. Not against me, not anymore. While Sophie Cunningham was firing back with buckets, there was another name turning heads all game long, Lexi Hull. She came off the bench like she was shot out of a cannon, flying into passing lanes, diving for loose balls, pressuring the Mystics. Guards like her life depended on it. And when the Fever needed someone to match Sophie's fire with pure hustle, Lexi delivered. 3 points, 4 steals, endless energy. Lexi didn't just fill up the stat sheet, she flipped the entire feel of the game. At a moment when Indiana looked like they were about to get run off their home court, she brought the spark that kept them alive. And here's the best part. She and Sophie were on the floor together for most of it. Their chemistry was electric. Off-ball movement, quick passes, defensive switches like clockwork, and the toughness, unmatched. They looked like they'd been running drills together all summer, like they were built for this exact moment. Fans online gave them a nickname almost instantly, the Blonde Bombers, and honestly, it fits. 2 hard-nosed, sharp-shooting, no-nonsense competitors who don't back down from contact and thrive under pressure. While Sophie brought the offensive firepower, Lexi brought the grit. She was attacking off the dribble, taking threes without hesitation, pulling up for mid-range shots, and even initiating the offense at times. But most importantly, she played with confidence, not hesitant, not deferential. She was assertive, which is exactly what this team needed with Clark out. Kelsey Mitchell said it best. Lexi brought the dirty work, that spark. And in games like this, games that get physical, emotional, and ugly, spark changes everything. Sophie might have led the charge, but Lexi matched her intensity every step of the way. Together, they became something the Fever desperately needed last season, a duo that sets the tone, not just follows it. The Blonde Bombers weren't just cool nicknames. They were the reason Indiana stayed in the fight. When regulation ended, the score was tied, but the momentum wasn't. The Mystics had blown a 15-point lead. Their intimidation tactics had backfired. And now they weren't just fighting the scoreboard. They were fighting a Fever team that had found its heart. And in overtime, Sophie Cunningham made sure they never had a chance. She came out locked in. You could see it in her posture. Her movement was crisp, her reads were instant, and every time she touched the ball, Washington looked nervous. She wasn't playing like it was preseason. She was playing like it was personal. Clutch mid-range, jumpers, hard-earned free throws, defensive stops, leadership. Sophie didn't just contribute in OT, she took over. Everything the Mystics had tried to do, every shove, every bump, every flagrant, they had handed her fuel. And now she was using it to bury them. This was her revenge arc. Final chapter. No yelling, no showboating, just precision, execution, control. The Fever ran their offense through her. She made the right reads. She made the right plays. And when it came down to the biggest moments, she delivered. And the Mystics, they had no answer. Their physicality had no impact anymore. Their early dominance had vanished. And the player they tried to knock out of the game was now knocking them out of it. Lexi Hull was right there too, slashing, defending, rebounding. The Fever were running, on pure adrenaline. And every single play was a reminder, this is not the same team as last year. The buzzer sounded. The crowd erupted. Indiana won the game. But more importantly, they won their identity back. And for Sophie Cunningham, this wasn't just a comeback. It was a message. You come for me, I'll come for the win. When the final buzzer rang, one team walked tall, and the other just walked away. The Indiana Fever had done it, down 15 points, missing their franchise star, physically targeted, and still, they fought back, forced overtime, and closed it out. But instead of shaking hands, instead of offering sportsmanship, the Washington Mystics headed straight to the locker room. No handshakes, no nods of respect. Just a cold walk-off after being out-toughed, outplayed, and outclassed by the very player they tried to humiliate. Why? Because deep down, they knew the truth. They came in thinking they could push Indiana around, and instead, they got punched in the mouth by a team that finally has teeth. The Fever didn't just win the game. They sent a message to the entire WNBA. We're not here to be disrespected anymore, and that message was led, loud and clear, by Sophie Cunningham. Coach Stephanie White didn't hold back afterward either. She called Sophie a dog, not as an insult, but as the highest praise in basketball culture, a relentless fighter, an energy source, an X-factor who elevates everyone around her. She plays with toughness. She raises the level of play the moment. She steps on the floor, even when she's not scoring, even on the sideline. The Fever didn't win this game with flash. They won it with grit. They picked up full court. They made 27 out of 28 free throws, 96% from the line. They played defense like every possession mattered, and when the game turned into a battle of wills, Indiana had more to give. This wasn't just a preseason win. This was a culture shift, the birth of a team that stands tall when things get ugly, and the Mystics couldn't handle it. This wasn't just about one flagrant foul. This wasn't just about Sophie Cunningham dropping 21 points or Lexi Hull flying all over the court. This was about identity. Because what we saw in this game was the official arrival of a different Indiana Fever team. Last season, they were young, inexperienced, easy to push around. Teams got physical with them, and more often than not, Indiana folded. The skill was there, the potential was obvious, but the fight, the grit, the swagger, that was missing. But now, that's the first thing you notice. You see it in Sophie's eyes when she gets back up from a cheap shot. You hear it in Bonner's voice when she stands up to another shove. You feel it in the energy of the bench, the crowd, the full 94 feet of hustle. The Fever finally have what every contending team needs. Edge, not fake toughness, not manufactured emotion. Real, earned, battle-tested fire. This team isn't waiting for Caitlin Clark to carry them. They're building around her. Players like Cunningham, Bonner, Hull, Mitchell, they're shaping a locker room that values accountability, intensity, and standing tall under pressure. And when Clark returns, she's not coming back to the same team she left. She's coming back to a squad of warriors, one that's ready to fight with her and for her. That's why this game matters. That's why this preseason moment meant more than the box score. Because this was the turning point, the moment when Indiana stopped being a rebuilding project and started becoming a problem for the rest of the league. So if teams still think the Fever are soft, try them. Just know this time, someone's going to step up, someone's going to push back, and someone, probably wearing number 9, is going to make you pay for it. This wasn't just a game, it was a warning shot. The Indiana Fever are done being pushed around. They're done being quiet, and they're done being underestimated. Sophie Cunningham didn't just respond to a cheap shot, she answered with buckets, with toughness, with leadership, and she sparked something bigger than herself. Now the Fever aren't just Caitlin Clark's team, they're a team with identity, with attitude, with fire. So to every team that thinks they can bully their way past Indiana, go ahead, try, because this time, they're ready. This time they've got dogs in the fight. This time they're built different. And if you're riding with this new Fever squad, if you stand with Sophie, with Lexi, with the team that fought back and took their respect, then drop a spicy Sophie in the comments, like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell because this is just the beginning. Indiana is coming. And now, the whole league knows it.